If you are a Star Wars fan like me, you've probably caught yourself waving open automatic doors and trying to pull the remote when it's just too far away. But as much as we try, we just can't use the Force. And just like characters in Star Wars, if you're not Force sensitive, you can't use the Force. That's the way it's always been. Well, until recently, that is. I'm Patrick, and this is... So I just finished watching the newest Star Wars TV series to hit Disney+, Ahsoka. While I personally feel that the show was quite lackluster, there is a more pressing issue that needs to be addressed. What is going on with the Force? You see, in the final episode of Ahsoka, Sabine suddenly gains the ability to use the Force after never before being able to do so. And these weren't some basic powers either. She was able to not only deflect blaster bolts, which required not just good reflexes but a certain level of precognition through the Force, but she was also able to do this. This was all from someone who just before couldn't even move a cup. So is it me, or have the rules that govern who can use the Force changed drastically? Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? The concept of the Force in Star Wars has gone through many transformations since its inception over 45 years ago. First described by Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope, the Force is
an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
It was later expanded upon in The Empire Strikes Back when Yoda says,
"Feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere."
In the original trilogy, the Force was quite simple. There was the light side and the dark side. Some people could use the Force while others could not, but it could be passed down through bloodlines. Then along came the prequel trilogy. While the core themes did remain mostly the same, George Lucas did add in two key elements: midichlorians and the prophecy of the Chosen One. Midichlorians, as described by Qui-Gon Jinn, are
a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force.
And the prophecy of the Chosen One, as described by Mace Windu.
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force.
While both of these elements needed to be understood by the fan base, the question surrounding the introduction of midichlorians was definitely more troubling. Was one's Force sensitivity now tied to some biological factor? A good question, but I think we can explain it. In the original trilogy, Yoda explained that the Force is everywhere. It's within each person, as well as things such as trees and rocks, or even in places. Yoda explains to Luke on Dagobah that the cave he enters is also strong with the dark side of the Force. This key detail is one that I think will help clear up many misunderstandings regarding the Force and midichlorians. Midichlorians themselves are not the Force, since the Force can exist in places or locations. Instead, midichlorians act as translators for the Force in living creatures. So the more midichlorians you have, the more of the Force you can tap into. This explains why Anakin had the potential to become the most powerful Force user of all time. And it doesn't undo anything that George previously stated, except for one thing. There was a statement made by George Lucas during the production of Return of the Jedi where he asserts that anyone can use the Force as long as they train hard enough. This quote from George Lucas has become the common defense for Sabine's sudden emergence of powers. However, just because George Lucas said something 40 years ago doesn't mean it still applies today. The introduction of midichlorians in The Phantom Menace clearly seems to be in conflict with his previous statement. Why did the Jedi in the prequel trilogy go through all this hard work to find these people with super rare Force abilities when they could just make anyone believe and train hard enough to use the Force? It makes no sense. George Lucas has also changed his mind on many other things too. Originally, Lucas claimed that Yoda was a guru of sorts who didn't fight, but that changed with Attack of the Clones. Anakin's fall to the dark side was also very different, with him being married openly to his wife, who slowly sees him become unhinged over a longer period of time, during which he would cut down Jedi who he felt betrayed him. Once the prequel trilogy came around, the Jedi were no longer able to be married at all. That's why Anakin had to get married in secret. Order 66 wiped out all the Jedi in one day, and Padme ended up dying in childbirth rather than on Alderaan like George originally planned. And this makes sense given that in Return of the Jedi, Luke asks Leia if she remembers her real mother. That's because at the time she did. The prequel trilogy didn't exist yet to retcon that. So no, not anyone can use the Force given they train hard enough, at least not to the level of a Jedi Knight. People who are defending Sabine are simply using a near 40-year-old outdated quote from George Lucas to justify a plot hole. If we accept that all it requires is some can-do attitude in order to use the Force, then we are diluting what it means to be a Jedi. And it also diminishes the value of non-Force sensitive characters too. In Rebels, I actually really liked Sabine. She was quirky and resourceful. She relied on her expertise in marksmanship, explosives, and sabotage to bring unique talents to her team. Sabine didn't need Force powers because she already had tons of amazing skills and talents that she earned herself without the Force. I truly feel that this all you need to do is believe trope is infecting the art of storytelling. Characters now can just do whatever they want, cross any boundary, and overcome any limitation as long as they believe hard enough. Even for a fantasy world, that is lazy storytelling. George Lucas didn't do this once when he was in control of Star Wars because his views probably changed. It's okay to not have every power. That's why people loved Han and Lando, Chewie, Padme, any of the clone troopers, and so many other characters, because they all brought different things to the table. Star Wars needs to remember that, and if it does, you won't hear me whining about it.